Hey, how are you doing today? Welcome to another edition of the Q&A Wednesday segment of our Next Evolution Athletics online training program. I, as always, am your host, Barrett Donovan, and here to answer your questions. I had one question this week that was actually quite interesting. Again, it was a nutrition question. And someone asked, briefly paraphrased, it's what is the difference between training day and non-training day nutrition, if there is any? So that's a really good question. Most people don't really realize there's a difference, and it's a subtle difference, but it can be a very large difference over time. So let's start with the first simplest answer. The main difference between training day and non-training day nutrition is on a training day you generally have more carbohydrate intake, and on a non-training day you generally have less carbohydrate intake and more fat. Okay, so the calories on both days generally in the first phase or two remain the same. And then what I'll do is I'll say keep the calories at 2,000 calories a day, but you might have 150 grams of carbohydrates on a training day and say 75 grams of carbohydrate of fat on a training day. And then on a non-training day, you might have 75 grams of carbohydrates and 100 grams of fat. Okay, so I just switched the two of them. And that's generally what I do for the first phase or two. And that's the simplest answer. As you get a little more advanced, sometimes what I like to do is, depending on the training days, and if you have a really high intensity training day with a lot of volume and then a lower training day with like less volume, more recovery, I'll generally adjust the calories as well. So say, for example, over a week's time, you need, say, 20,000 calories, okay? But what I'll do is I'll have a higher calorie day for a really hard training session, maybe 2 training sessions, and then a moderate training day for like a moderate day, maybe 1 training session is pretty difficult, and then a recovery day training day. So the calories may adjust as well. And then I may tweak the carbohydrates, carbohydrates and fat as well. Generally, the protein requirements remain the same across the board. Okay, but the main difference is the energy sources and the recovery. You need the carbohydrates for immediate energy for training, and you need the fats for recovery because that's primarily where you get your hormonal production. So that's generally how I divide the two of them up. Okay, so in the first phase, generally higher carbohydrate and lower fat on a training day. On a non-training day, it's higher fat, lower carbohydrate. And then sometimes, like I said, as we go down into more complicated and carb cycling or calorie cycling programs, you could go into like higher calorie days, lower calorie days. As long as the requirements remain the same throughout the week, it generally works fairly well. That's many of the questions you had this week, guys. I really appreciate them. Keep them coming. They're really interesting. Thank you very much.